So here we have the first question, the 411, and we want to start on the why question. So we've already answered the first why we should share the gospel. Jesus said it, and that should be enough. However, there's actually other compelling reasons why we should share the gospel, and we're going to just look at one of those right now. And so what I need you to do is I need you to write Second Corinthians chapter 5 verse 17 through 21. And so what I want you to do is just put an underline under that, kind of to mark it out from everything. And what you need to do at this point is just read that with your buddy and just take a few moments to do that. This should take about 20, 30 seconds to do that. All right, so you do that. So you go back and forth, or just read that with your buddy. And then we come back. So this is about 30 seconds later. And the first thing we do is we want to start, we want to say basically there's a lot going on in this passage, and it would take all day to unpack it. We're just going to look at just a few high level things going on in this passage. And we're actually going to start at the end of it in verse 21. So if you could write verse 21 right there, and then I want you to draw a cross underneath it, just like that, real simple. And then what I want you to do is I want you to draw an arrow going over and kind of like an arc, and then another arc going back. And in verse 21, we see something incredibly significant happening. We see that Christ gives us his righteousness, his perfection, so to speak. And in exchange, we give him our sin. And this is one of the many things that are going on at the cross, and this is the gospel. So we call this the great exchange, where Christ gives me his righteousness and his perfection, and in exchange we give him our sin. This is one of the best truths of the gospel. So what I want you to do right now is just share what we see in verse 21, the great exchange, the exchange of Christ's righteousness for our sin. Just take a moment and go back and forth and explain to your buddy what's happening in verse 21. All right, here we are. Come back. And what I want you to do now is I want you to draw an arrow just like this right there. And I want you to put verse 17 right there. And then I want you to draw a stick figure and his arms up because he should be happy. And then I want you to put sparkles around him, or he's just shining bright like he's new. And so we jump back to the beginning of this passage, and Jesus, or Paul says, if you are in Christ, you are a new creation. The old is passing away, and look, the new has come. And so one of the things that happens because of this great exchange is I become a new creation. That's a phenomenal thought. And not to say that you don't deal with the consequences of your sin and stuff, but from God's perspective, you are seen new. So because of this great exchange, one of the things we learn right here is we have a new identity. We're a new creation. So with your buddy, just explain that coming out of this exchange, we have a new identity. We are a new creation. The old is slowly passing away, and look, the new has come. Take just a moment and explain that to your buddy. Go back and forth. All right, we just give them I don't know, 30, 40 seconds to do that. And then we want to draw another arrow over here. All right. And we want to put an arrow right there. And then we want to put verse 20, just like that. And then we're going to attempt to draw a globe here. If you could draw a circle just like that, and then put a plus sign right there, and then another one right through it. And then we're going to put a line above and a line below. And then we're going to draw parentheses just like that. So in verse 20, we find out, well, in verse 17, we're a new creation. In verse 20, we find out that we are now ambassadors of Christ. Massive, wonderful concept. And so at this point, I typically ask people, what is an ambassador? And you'll get all kinds of answers. But ultimately, an ambassador doesn't have their own message. They represent a king or a kingdom or a government or a prince or some type, and they have a message from that king. In fact, we get that message right here. It's told we have the message of reconciliation. I'm just going to put reconciliation, a long word won't fit there. But in this passage, we find out that he's entrusted us with a message of reconciliation, as though he's making his appeal through us to the world. So just an amazing concept. So here's how we want to end this. You can't be new and not be an ambassador. And you can't be an ambassador and not be new. These are two of the same identities. So the reason we share the gospel, go back to the top, it's who we are. It is our identity. Right. So what I want you to do right now is I just want you to, with your buddy, I want you to explain that the other identity or thing we've discovered because of this great exchange is we've been called ambassadors representing a king, and we've been entrusted with the message of reconciliation as though God is making his appeal through us. So you can't be new and not be an ambassador, and you can't be an ambassador and not be new. And the reason we share the gospel, it's our identity. So just go back and forth with your buddy and just explain this piece. So one of the things we do just to kind of tie this up, just kind of a little quick thing. People often say they don't have the gift of evangelism. And when you hear that, you want to tell people you're right. You don't have the gift of evangelism. It's much more than that. It's your identity. And by the way, there is no gift of evangelism. There's only the office of evangelist, and the evangelist is to equip the church to do the work. All right. So there's the first question of the 401. Why should we share the gospel? It's who we are.